All right, Keith, to start with, we're going to talk about Everton. Now, of course, we know that the takeover deadline has been extended until the end of May. That was confirmed by Richard Masters. What were your thoughts on the announcement?
Well, it's becoming, I think, towards the end game now is what I'm starting to feel. And it does appear that people's positions are hardening. But in the end, it's coming to the last sort of act of negotiation between the present debt holders. The key players obviously are rights and media funding, who have the largest and I think the strongest position in terms of debt owed to the club. There's then this company MSP from the United States that have another very strong position in regards to the stadium. And then we have our friends 777, who have also got now close to £200 million of debt into the club as well. So between those three, there's going to have to be some discussions and there's going to have to be some position taken. I think it's always hard when you get to this poker playing time in a deal when nobody wants to take what they call a haircut in the parlance of the private equity world. But I think it's some situation will have to come where people are going to have to give and take to maintain Everton's position, and hopefully a new potential either equity player will come in and take out. Possibly 777 would be one scenario, and then work together the three groups to then stabilize, take the debt over a longer period, stabilize the club, and then get into through next season, still in the Premiership, and then hopefully into the new stadium, and then that will give, I think, a good injection of revenue that can start to see Everton really starting to climb back up again in terms of stability, at least.
And Keith, in terms of the fans and fan groups, what are they saying about this now and the fact this deadline has been extended? There is extra time for 777 to get this over the line. Are fans pleased? Are they disappointed? What's the sentiment among the fans?
I think the fans, there's a sort of a dissatisfaction about the fact that 777 are still in the picture and Mashiri has not disavowed them. However, I tend to believe that he probably can't right now, because that may trigger a repayment of their debt. So I completely understand his position. He has already said that he's trying to talk to other groups and that he's appointed a third party to do that. So at some stage, he's doing what he can. I think that the fans in general really felt that, there was a bit of relief when the whole relegation issue was resolved. And so it's a bit of an anticlimax to then say, okay, right, everything's fine. Everything will work out great. However, there are still some very serious issues in terms of the business structure behind the scenes. And of course, still that other charge hanging over us in terms of the PSR situation about the interest payments on the stadium. So there's a few things still to be resolved, and it is coming to a head, in my opinion, right now.
I mean, now the Premier League season, Keith, has wrapped up, like you were saying, and there's that relief for Evertonians that you won't be getting relegated. How quickly are we expecting this to be wrapped up? Do you think 777 do get this over the line before May 31st? Could we see an extension again into June? Or actually, do you think by that point they'll move on and look at other suitors potentially?
Well, I think they have to look at other people right now. I mean, 777 have had a fair bit of time now, as I think we've all documented quite clearly. They've also been told quite clearly what it's going to take from the Premier League in order to get the deal across the line. They haven't been able to satisfy that as far as we can see. So, yes, I think, I know that there are other groups that have been out there in the wings, and some of them have already passed on the opportunity. I know that as well. So there is certainly interest, and as things keep evolving and changing and people's positions change on what they're prepared to accept, I do think we'll come to a conclusion, not before the transfer window, unfortunately, but I think it's going to be sometime during the summer now.
Are you concerned, Keith, about the summer transfer window? Is there a worry that, irrespective of outgoings, actually in terms of incomings, there actually might not be many names potentially spoken about because of the lack of leadership at the top?
I don't think it's so much the lack of leadership at the top. It's a case of, without the funding being restructured, it would be very hard for the club to carry on spending in the transfer window. And I think selling is going to have to be the order of the day at the moment. So that's really the imperative that's making that happen. And it does seem certainly that we're going to be losing a few players, and could be 2 or 3 of the quality players that we're looking at, in order to get this whole PSR issue resolved once and for all. And then, of course, the question is, can we put the squad together that can maintain the Premiership status for next year? That's going to be the big question mark, and that's what everybody's looking at. Already we've seen that Garner Gay has been given an extra year, Seamus Coleman and Ashley Young. So there's three, and the age, of course, of all three are, an interesting question mark for the fans, but still, obviously, three great professionals and well respected. Many people have been saying Garner Gay was probably the player of the season in many ways. Certainly, Seamus is always admired. Ashley has got a sort of a 50-50 feeling, I think, amongst the fans, but still, they're three very quality professionals. And so we've got to put a squad together, as I say. Whoever we do divest of, from the squad, we've got to put some replacements in place and get enough strength to maintain Premiership status, because I think getting into that new stadium is going to be a crucial factor in every negotiation.
So is that the key focus then, Keith, going into next year, given all the issues going on off field currently, that really next season you're looking at sort of survival in the Premier League again to then build on the following year? That's sort of the rough feeling amongst the fans potentially?
I think that's the feeling, is to certainly to do that. It may also be that, say, for instance, somebody like MSP may hold the club together this season with a view to then saying, right, we've now got a completely different asset that we're selling on to somebody else, a club in the Premiership and into the new stadium. So it may well be a holding season in many, many ways. So it becomes just as crucial as the last few that have been in relegation fights. This one, again, has got to be performing and got to be crucially Premier League status in this season coming up.
And Keith, what did you make of 777 owned Red Star FC in Paris protesting against their owners? And actually, like we discussed in previous weeks, is it a concern for the club that quite a few clubs that are owned by 777 actually aren't pleased with their ownership?
Of course, it must be a concern. I mean, you're seeing things like the court cases in Brazil, where the 777 directors have been, stripped of control of Vasco. Also in Standard Liège, there's been issues around the 777 ownership there, obviously, and there's an incredible amount of litigation that's been going on around them and around their football clubs. It's very difficult, and of course, everybody must take notice of that, and it isn't good to see it repeated in so many places. So it's a concern, and certainly when staff aren't being paid in other clubs and players aren't being paid, etc., those things concern not only the club owners here in Everton, but also it would concern the fans, because Everton fans really do want to see the right thing done by staff and on players, etc., of other clubs, because they believe in doing things the right way.
And overall, Keith, how would you rate the season just gone out of 10? What were your general thoughts for Everton's performance on and off field? And what are your hopes for next season?
Well, I think given the distractions that have been going on and off the field, I've got to give it probably an 8, in my opinion. I think it was an incredible effort. It probably would have been higher if there's some games that were lost at the start of the season that shouldn't have been lost before many of the major distractions came into real focus. So that was the weak point of the season. But I think overall, and the way they finished and the way Sean Dyche handled the whole situation and the players themselves, I've got to say I'm going to give it an 8. So overall, given what we've had and the cloud that we've been under, and so many different clouds, I've got to say that I'm happy with an 8. And yes, relieved to see it before the end of the season that we were safe.